So, how do you go from being the absolute, undisputed king of the skies to basically an endangered species in less than 4 months? It sounds impossible, right? Well, in late 1943, the German Luftwaffe, they literally laughed at the waves of American bombers that were trying to fly into their airspace. But by the spring of 1944, all that laughter was gone, and it was replaced by the sound of a very specific engine, an engine that would forever be linked to the total collapse of their air force. Okay, let's dive into the story of how one single, really unexpected piece of technology caused one of the most stunning, most complete reversals of fortune in all of modern warfare.
To really get the shock of what's about to happen, you first have to understand the confidence. And I mean, in the autumn of 1943, the Luftwaffe pilots, they weren't just confident, they were utterly dominant. For them, shooting down a B-17 Flying Fortress, well, it wasn't a chaotic dogfight. No, it was a cold, calculated equation. It was a math problem. They knew the American strategy of daylight precision bombing was bleeding the 8th Air Force completely dry. And so as they climbed into their cockpits, they absolutely knew, that the bombers coming to meet them were flying on a whole lot of courage, but not much else.
And this number, this one number, is the brutal final answer to that equation: 77. On a single day, October 14th, 1943, the Americans sent this huge force to attack critical ball-bearing factories deep in Germany. By the time the sun set, 77 of those B-17s were gone. They were either shot down in flames or so completely torn to pieces they had to be scrapped. That's a nearly 26% loss rate for one mission. Can you imagine being told before starting a project that 1 in every 4 of you just wouldn't be coming back? The Americans, they called it Black Thursday. For the Luftwaffe, though, it was just confirmation of what they already believed. The skies over Germany belonged to them, period.
Now, what's really fascinating here is that this kind of destruction, it wasn't just random luck. It was a science. It was a perfected, repeatable process. German aces had spent years developing these tactics, like the head-on attack. Can you picture this? They'd come screaming through the bomber formations at a combined speed of over 600 miles per hour. This gave the bombers' gunners a split second, a nearly impossible shot. Or they'd organize into these massive company fronts, a dozen fighters flying wingtip to wingtip, a literal wall of cannon fire that was designed not just to shoot down planes, but to induce absolute panic. It was a terrifyingly effective system of destruction. So you're probably asking the crucial question, why were the bombers so alone out there? And the answer, well, it came down to a problem that seemed completely impossible to solve: basic physics. You see, the primary American escort fighter, the powerful P-47 Thunderbolt, was an absolute gas guzzler. Its combat radius was just 375 miles. So as you can see here, that meant it could get the bombers to the front door of Germany, but then it had to turn around and go home. This created this vast sanctuary deep inside the Reich where the Luftwaffe could just wait. They could gather their forces and attack the bombers with zero opposition.
The German pilots even had a name for it. They called it the Golden Moment. They'd watch on their radar as the American escorts, the little friends as they call them, reached their fuel limit and peeled away for home. For the bomber crews, it was the single most terrifying moment of any mission. Your heart would just sink into your stomach. The sky would suddenly feel huge and empty and incredibly hostile. You were all alone, deep in enemy territory, and all you could do was listen to your radio crackle with warnings of German fighters climbing up to meet you. You knew what was coming.
After the Black Thursday disaster, the American bombing campaign was literally put on hold. The losses were just too great. The strategy was completely broken. And for a moment, it really seemed like the Luftwaffe had won. But, as it so often happens in history, the solution was already being born. And it wasn't out of some grand strategic plan from a general. Nope, it came from a really unlikely combination of international cooperation, a very bold promise, and, well, a little bit of inspired tinkering.
So let's see how this all came together, because it's a fascinating story. The British, they desperately needed fighters. So they asked an American company, North American Aviation, to build them an existing model. But the company president made this unbelievably audacious claim. He said, "Give us 120 days and we'll design you something brand new and better." And they did. But the plane's original American engine, it was pretty mediocre at high altitudes. The real magic, the lightning-in-a-bottle moment, happened when a British test pilot suggested, hey, why don't we try putting our Merlin engine in it? The very same engine that powered their legendary Spitfire. And the result of that Anglo-American marriage was the P-51 Mustang.
And this right here, this was the secret sauce. It wasn't just about raw power from the engine. The Mustang had a brand new, radical wing design. Now think of it like this. Most airplane wings kind of bulldoze their way through the air, creating a lot of turbulence and drag. But the Mustang's laminar flow wing was different. It was designed to slice through the air, keeping the airflow incredibly smooth and clean. Just that one innovation cut drag by nearly a third. And less drag meant it was unbelievably fuel efficient. And that efficiency, that was the key that unlocked the entire problem of range.
Just look at this chart for a second. This isn't some small, incremental improvement we're talking about. This is a complete revolution. The P-47, it taps out at 375 miles. The bigger P-38 Lightning, it gets you to 550. But the P-51B Mustang could fly 850 miles from its base. 850 miles. All of a sudden, there was no more sanctuary. A Mustang could fly from England all the way to Berlin, hang out over the target, get into a fight, and then fly all the way back. The unsolvable problem was solved. Just like that.
And the impact was brutally, incredibly fast. The very first Mustangs arrived in England in November, just 1 month after Black Thursday. By December, German pilots who were expecting another easy turkey shoot were suddenly ambushed by fighters they never ever thought could be there. And then, the ultimate shock. In March of 1944, Mustangs escorted American bombers over the capital of the Reich itself, Berlin. In the time it takes for the seasons to change, the entire air war had been flipped completely on its head.
This quote from the head of the entire Luftwaffe, it just perfectly captures the psychological blow. At first, the German high command flat out refused to believe the reports. Single-engine fighters? Over Berlin? Impossible. But when the photographic evidence became undeniable, they understood the terrifying implication. Their entire defensive strategy, the one built on the simple assumption of a safe heartland, had just evaporated overnight. The jig was well and truly up.
You see, the arrival of the Mustang didn't just balance the scales, it shattered them into a million pieces. The once confident hunters of 1943 became the terrified, hunted prey of 1944. And what followed wasn't a gradual decline. It was a catastrophic, rapid collapse of what had been one of the world's most elite and feared air forces.
So here's the crucial point. It became a war of attrition that Germany simply could not win. Just look at these numbers. In only the first 3 months of 1944, the Luftwaffe lost over 5,000 pilots. Now you can build new planes, but you can't build new veterans. These were their aces, their flight leaders, the absolute core of their experience and knowledge. America was training thousands of new pilots every single month. Germany was losing its very soul. And the American commander, General Jimmy Doolittle, he saw his advantage and he pressed it ruthlessly. He issued a new, completely game-changing order. His fighters were no longer just passive bodyguards for the bombers. Their new mission was simple, and it was brutal. Go find the German Air Force and kill it, wherever you can find it. This unleashed the Mustang pilots. They would escort the bombers in and then dive to the treetops, strafing airfields, hunting the hunters as they tried to take off or land.
This quote from German ace Walter Schuck, it tells you everything you need to know about that psychological shift. That feeling of being a knight of the air, this master of a deadly and chivalrous craft, it was just gone. It was replaced by a constant gnawing fear of being hunted. Mustangs circled their own bases like sharks. There was no escape. There was no safe haven, not even on the ground. The sky itself, their home, had turned against them.
And if you want to see the final stunning result for this entire campaign, just look at this number, 2. On D-Day, June 6, 1944, as the greatest invasion force in human history stormed the beaches of Normandy, the once invincible Luftwaffe managed to get just two planes through the Allied air shield to attack the soldiers below. That's it. Total air supremacy bought and paid for by the Mustang and other fighters was what made the entire land invasion of Europe even possible.
So, why does a story about an 80-year-old airplane still matter so much to us today? Because the story of the P-51, it isn't just about war. It's a blueprint. It's a powerful case study in innovation, in strategy, and in the fatal trap of believing that a problem is impossible to solve.
So what's the big takeaway for us? Well, I think it's 3 things, really. First, true innovation isn't always about inventing something brand new out of thin air. It's often about creatively combining what already exists, like an American airframe and a British engine. Second, hubris is a killer. The Luftwaffe laughed because they couldn't imagine a solution to the range problem, and in doing so, they fatally underestimated their enemy's desperate need to find one. And finally, it shows that while courage is absolutely essential, modern conflicts are often won by the side that can produce, adapt, and innovate on a massive industrial scale.
And that kind of leaves us with a provocative thought, doesn't it? The Mustangs solved a problem that literally everyone thought was impossible by combining two things that were never meant to go together. So it forces you to ask, what problem in our world today, in technology and climate and medicine, seems completely unsolvable, but is really just waiting for someone, somewhere, to try the right unexpected combination?